Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, they want action on climate change.
What do we want? Green New Deal. When do we want it? Now.
Demonstrators conduct a die-in at the office of a San Diego congressman. What he and police did about it.
The push to get Californians to fill out the census next year and the warning about what it would mean for the state if they don't. That story's coming up.
And San Diego is investing in new technology, but could it create cracks in our cybersecurity system? KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. It's Friday, August 16th. I'm Ebony Monet. Today, dozens of students stormed Congressman Scott Peters' office. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman was there as they called on him to support the Green New Deal.
What do we want? Green New Deal. When do we want it? Now.
Teens and adults crowded Scott Peters' San Diego congressional office Friday.
There is no more time. We don't have another second, another hour of another day to not take significant climate action.
The group San Diego 350 organized a die-in for climate change, calling on Scott Peters to co-sign the Green New Deal. He's the last Democratic congressman from San Diego County to not support the legislation. At one point, the protesters were led inside Peters' office, but were quickly turned away. Then people propped open the office door. Someone inside said the congressman was not there today. The office complex security tried to kick out the climate protesters, but seemed unsure what to do, so they called police. After about 30 minutes, the San Diego Police Department showed up, so all the protesters moved outside here. They say Scott Peters will definitely hear this message.
We really want him to know that, these issues, he's not being a representative if he's not representing the youth.
What do we want? Green New Deal. When do we want it? Now.
I think he's definitely going to hear it.
Green New Deal.
Scott Peters' office issued a statement to KPBS saying the congressman has a 20-year record of fighting to reverse climate change, including recently laying out dozens of bills that Congress can act on, and that the Green New Deal is a non-binding resolution that contains no actual legislation.
Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
The message I guess we wanted to say is, step up or step aside for the Green New Deal.
A rep for Peters says these climate rallies have not been productive and have not changed the congressman's mind. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
It's months away. Still, there's a push to make sure every Californian is counted in the 2020 census. KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us how this is playing out in San Diego County.
At the Educational Cultural Complex on Friday, the education wasn't happening in classrooms. It was here in the lobby, various community groups sharing information on strategies to make sure everyone in the county gets counted.
So let us all do our best, work hard, and collaborate.
And here in the auditorium, where some of the top elected officials in the state talked about the importance of an accurate count. It all comes down to the distribution of federal dollars doled out based on population.
So it's extremely important that every single person participates, because this has to deal with how we qualify for important government programs. Money for education, money for roads, money for libraries, parks, all those things that we love.
A big concern for everyone here are so-called HTCs, hard-to-count communities. That's part of the reason California lawmakers are funding the counting effort this time in a much more significant way than last time around. Sacramento invested about $2 million in the push to get everyone counted for the 2010 census. This time around, the legislature has ponied up $187 million statewide. United Way of San Diego County is the lead agency in the effort here.
There's over 250,000 people that we're going to try to outreach to and get them comfortable with the importance of completing the census next year.
Officials working with the California Complete Count effort are using every tool they have to make sure people fill out the census. That includes a fairly harsh warning about what it would mean for California financially if that doesn't happen.
$1,000 per person per year that's at stake. Population of about 40 million, about $40 billion a year.
Only Democratic lawmakers came to today's conference, but Nancy Sasaki rejected the notion that this was a partisan event.
It's definitely not a partisan thing, because what we're talking about are hard-to-count populations. It doesn't matter what political persuasion you have. It's important that you know that you should be counted in the census.
The Census Bureau will start sending out postcards next March, inviting everyone to fill out the census. An invitation that people here hope is acted on by everyone who gets it. John Carroll, KPBS News.
San Diego Cal Fire crews are working the Border 8 fire in Mexico. They headed out this morning. The fire started around 6 this morning, about 20 miles south of San Diego. It has burned 1,500 acres and is 30% contained. So far, no structures are threatened. And while the fire remains in Mexico, Cal Fire says it's still a threat to the U.S. And crews were busy overnight pouring concrete for the Mid-Coast Trolley Project. The work is being done along La Jolla Village Road in Genesee. When complete in late 2021, commuters will be able to travel from the university area to the border, helping ease congestion in one of the most densely populated areas. Also today, Sandag announced it has issued $335 million in bonds to help finance the $2.1 billion project. There's a battle going on in North Park over parking and bike lanes. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen investigates whether one side is inflating its neighborhood support.
A group calling itself Save 30th Street Parking filed a lawsuit this week to block a plan to replace parking spaces with protected bike lanes. City leaders and cyclists say the project on 30th Street will give cyclists a safer place to ride, and it will help implement San Diego's climate action plan. 3 months ago, the bike lane opponents submitted signatures from an online petition to the mayor's office. They claimed all the names were from North Park, but a KPBS review showed only half the signers came from the city of San Diego. In fact, many came from out of state. Now, this comes after the group repeatedly dismissed supporters of the bike lanes who come from other neighborhoods or cities. Here's the group's leader, Pat Sexton, speaking on Tuesday.
The bicyclists are from, that group of people are from Escondido, Ocean Beach, Linda Vista. I'm not really all that interested in you know, we don't go to their neighborhoods in La Mesa and wherever and try to change their whole neighborhood to suit them.
Sexton and her group did not respond to an interview request. The list of online signatures was released in response to a public records request from the group's attorney. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
A local humanitarian and activist has died. Gracia Molina Enriquez de Pic died surrounded by family in Mexico on Sunday. She will be remembered as a champion for human rights. She was an SDSU alumni, and she was honored by KPBS a few years ago. There will be a celebration of life at SDSU next Monday. Gracia was 91 years old. The South Bay is the focus for the latest in our KPBS series, Where I Come From. So far, we visited El Cajon, and we'll also have stories from Fallbrook. Tonight, we go to Imperial Beach, where people talk about the increasing cost of living.
Both my kids could not afford to live here. I think if they could, they would.
We're becoming more like Coronado and less like Imperial Beach.
There's a bar down on the beach where a lot of the bikers hung out, and I think it's still there. I think they still hang out there, but it's really developed a lot.
So it was like a little town in the middle of nowhere where you mainly had low-income people, you had a lot of bikers, you had a lot of bars, proximity to the border, all the biases you can imagine.
That we're now facing what a lot of other communities have started to face, which is the pro and con of gentrification, and so how to not lose, you know, that residents don't get pushed out.
People are scared. A lot of people are actually moving out of town because it's too expensive to live here. You know, a house down the street from mine is like $655,000. That's a lot of money.
Now we have very few children on the block because young married couples can't afford the homes. And that's one of the things that changes the character of the town.
You're from IB, you want to buy an IB, but it's just so competitive in the real estate market now. You got investors coming in, paying cash, you got other people, and it's a lot of money to buy now.
Gentrification has taken place here in IB. It was bound to happen, but I would still like it to be a place that's affordable, because I would love for my children to be able to buy property here like we did 40 years ago.
I think that it still has its beach sense. That beach culture that I think other beach communities have lost. And I think that's the struggle here, is that we really hold on to it.
We'd like to hear what you think about our series, Where I Come From. Go to KPBS's Facebook page and join the conversation. The theme of this week's weather has been the heat. So the question is, will the weekend bring relief? Meteorologist Gracia Molina has tonight's forecast.
Tonight, partly cloudy skies here across San Diego, dropping down to 64. And what we've been noticing through much of today, not only here in San Diego, but points really further inland, is that cooler air. We'll continue to see temperatures not as oppressive through this weekend, dropping down into the lower 60s for Oceanside, and noticing that marine layer bringing clouds back into the coastal region. 76 in Borrego Springs, and a overnight low in Mount Laguna, going to be at 59 degrees and looking clear. Plenty of sunshine for Saturday, and we're feeling typical for this time of year for California, Nevada, Utah, as well as Arizona. So no complaints in terms of extreme heat, especially here in San Diego County. 75 in Oceanside for your high tomorrow, lower 70s into San Diego, and topping off at 107 for Borrego Springs, needing the sunglasses in Mount Laguna with a high at 79 degrees. Now through the early week, that heat will still be in place, but we're going to be noticing past the early week really starting to build as we have a ridge that's going to continue to build over the nation. So not only going to be hot for the southwest, but also noticing some steamy conditions into the south central U.S. And as you head out to the eastern half of the U.S., it is on the wet side. We remain on the dry side for much of our extended forecast. At the coast, mid-70s for Saturday, Sunday into your Monday with partly sunny skies. We'll continue to see partly sunny conditions Tuesday, but notice starting to watch temperatures rise as we head into the midweek. And that's going to be the trend as well for inland areas. We'll be in the 80s for much of your extended forecast. And then by Tuesday, you're going to notice that heat kicking up a tad bit more with a high of 89. Wednesday, it's hot with a high at 94. Also going to be noticing that heat building back in for the desert. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, not feeling too bad, right where we should be for this time of year. And then we go from warm to hot into your Tuesday and Wednesday with a temperature forecasted at 113 for your Wednesday high. Overnight low is going to be in the 80s out to the deserts by the time we hit mid next week. We'll be in the 70s for your Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, then finally getting our way into the 80s on Tuesday out to the mountains, nearing 90 by Wednesday, but with lots of sunshine. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Gracia Molina. Back to you.
San Diego is investing in new technology with the goal of helping the city become more advanced. But as science and technology reporter Shalina Chetlani explains, these innovations create questions about cybersecurity.
The city of San Diego is trying to become one of the nation's smart cities. That means installing infrastructure like this, a smart streetlight, which can analyze data in real time. But there are still a lot of questions about whether this type of technology is secure.
And many of those questions are coming from residents like Brian Walker, who works at a tattoo shop downtown.
So it's like, what's the purpose? And like, who's the company that is the third-party source that's doing all this monitoring, and what are their intentions in the first place?
At the City Administration Building downtown, Eric Caldwell, Director of Economic Development for San Diego, says it's only the city that's collecting data from these smart technologies.
And here it's monitoring for parking. So it's giving us parking information. It knows how many cars are parked and when they've come in and out.
And the intention, he says, is to help the city save money and become more efficient.
It's about taking information that you already have and putting sensors into the urban environment, sensors into your workflow, so that you're getting near real-time data that helps you make better decisions.
For example, a smart streetlight can autonomously turn off when it senses no one is around. In recent years, the city has deployed around 3,000 smart streetlights, with plans to install 1,000 more. Caldwell says the lights can show how many people or bikes go by, what the temperature's like outside, or even driver patterns in communities.
That's really critical information in terms of understanding how changes we're making to mobility infrastructure is actually being utilized by the public.
And he says the city has plans to become smarter. But the idea of a smart city doesn't appeal to all. There are a couple of concerns. One is, how does a city physically secure data that it's collecting? Darren Bennett, Chief Information Security Officer for the City of San Diego, attended a U.S. Chamber of Commerce cybersecurity conference in San Diego last month. He says the city is always trying to stay ahead on security, at least from a hardware perspective.
We follow best practices for security. We use different security standards. We have a third-party auditor come in and monitor our work, evaluate if we're up to standards. It depends. We also know what our critical data is and where it is and protect it accordingly.
But he says it's impossible to stay ahead of every possibility.
There's no perfect entity. I always joke that it's an unfair game, right? You have a limited number of security professionals trying to secure an entity, and then you basically have almost an unlimited number of foreign hackers that are trying to get in.
And there's a second concern that was brought up at the same conference in a panel that Adam Bolio of the consulting company Deloitte was moderating.
And how are these smart cities, of San Diego going to change the way we live, and how do we prepare for to manage the risks that are going to be associated with that?
One sentence puts the smart city in proper perspective. It's basically security versus civil liberties.
UCSD's Gordon Romney says the reality of imperfect security paired with the collection of personal data is concerning.
How do we maintain the sanctity of the individual and their privacy?
Back at the city administration building, Eric Caldwell says San Diego takes both physical and personal security seriously. It's doing that by not only investing in IT technology that's secure, but also by being cautious about what type of data is being collected in the first place. For example, he says the streetlights are just collecting metadata.
It's just numbers. It's not telling you who walked by. It's not telling you where they were going. It's not following people around the city. It's not providing raw video data.
This data, he says, is intended to help the city create helpful tools.
And so one of the things that we're hoping that somebody in the community will actually do is take this information and use it to develop an application that would allow people to understand where on-street parking is available in the city.
Though Caldwell says it's only the city that's handling the data, still some residents like Brian Walker feel skeptical.
So it's like, what are they doing with the other portion of the data? Are they selling it to other people that are data mining people's everyday lives? Because that's kind of weird and creepy.
For KPBS News, I'm Shalina Chatlani.
United Airlines is now telling its pilots they can't drink alcohol 12 hours before reporting to work. The new rules come a week after 2 pilots were arrested in Scotland. They're accused of being intoxicated before a flight to New Jersey. The 12-hour rule is stricter than the Federal Aviation Administration's 8-hour policy. Flight crews for American, Delta, and Southwest follow the 8-hour guideline. A visit to your doctor could one day include mandatory screenings for drugs. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force is recommending doctors screen all patients for illicit drug use. That includes pregnant women. The experts panel is doing so could help accurately with diagnoses and effective treatment. The move comes as the country tries to get a handle of the nationwide opioid epidemic. When it comes to taking prescription drugs, a new study found women take more than men. That's according to the CDC. Data also found that most adults ages 40 to 79 took at least 1 prescription drug per month, and 1 in 5 took at least 5 pills. For the younger half of the group, antidepressants were the most popular. For the older set, cholesterol-lowering drugs continue to be a favorite. This week, U.S. stocks dropped 800 points in one day. Today, stocks are bouncing back. So what's causing this volatility? We're talking about that, plus a survey that says most Americans don't have enough money saved for a rainy day. And finally, new numbers showing just how expensive it is to live here in San Diego. Joining us now is Miro Kopik with SDSU and Bottom Line Marketing. Welcome.
Hi, Ebony. How are you?
I'm doing great. So some analysts have said that the stocks dropping was connected to the recession. Others say it's because of the trade war with China. What's causing all of this uncertainty?
Well, there's a lot of confusion, and both are correct. So on the plus side, there's going to be a lot of volatility going forward. On the plus side, you still have a relatively strong economy. You have low unemployment. You have a lot of consumer spending, which is really good. On the downside, yes, number one is the trade war with China. The other thing that happened is the global economy is hurting. Germany announced a contraction for the first time on Wednesday for the last quarter. The UK is in the same shape, and China is also being impacted. Their growth rate is the slowest in 17 years. And finally, what really freaked out the market was that the yield curve, which is that short-term rates generally are lower than long-term rates, switched. That meant that short-term rates were higher than the 10-year Treasury bill rates. When that happens, that's a signal to recession. And Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, one of the biggest hedge funds in the country, predicted a 40% chance of recession.
Very scary. And speaking of hurting, a new survey found that many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and don't have nearly enough saved for retirement. What's going on when there's other signs of a healthy economy, such as a low unemployment rate?
That could suggest that the wages aren't there. People aren't earning enough, even though there's been wage increases. That the average American, the median income is about $60,000. That has not budged since 2000, basically. 6 in 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 45% of all Americans carry credit card debt. And so you can imagine when you have credit card debt or credit cards, for really good credit scores at 11% interest or 20% or 25% for poor credit scores, that's a big burden on a household. The one thing that's really fascinating about this whole study was that Americans are more preoccupied with what their friends and family are doing in social media. They're so shocked that people seem to be spending a lot of money in these experiences. They're focusing more on what their friends are spending than how they're saving.
That is very interesting. And finally, the San Diego Union Tribune actually crunched some recent numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which found that San Diegans are spending more due to inflation rates. Can you tell us more about that?
San Diego is the third city with the highest inflation rate. So San Francisco has almost a 4% inflation rate, LA 3%, and we're 2.8%. That means, and the national average is just under 2% for the first 6 months of the year. So this is the study. So that means we're spending, not only do we have higher cost of living in general for housing, for gas prices, for all sorts of things, the growth of those products and services is growing at a much faster rate. So this year, rent is up almost 4%, gas is up almost 3%, medical costs for San Diegans is up over 2.5%. So all of this stuff kind of ratchets things up. The inflation rate is a lot less expensive, and even in other parts of the country. So even though the median income in San Diego is $76,000, when you start paying taxes and the increased cost of living in San Diego and these incremental rate of inflation, that's an extra $1,000 a year just in the increase in prices that San Diegans pay.
So I hate to end it on that sour note, but that wraps it up for this week's Friday Business Report. Miro Kopik, thanks so much for your time.
Hopefully better next week.
Yes, hopefully.
SDG&E wants to raise the minimum price it charges customers. San Diego State bungles a major construction project, and how the San Diego Zoo is making progress in saving endangered rhinos. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
A San Diego couple together for nearly 70 years is still going strong. They say their love is sustained by a love of music and matching outfits. Dina Kupfer has this story.
Promise me we'll still be sweethearts after graduation day.
Every note and every outfit harmonized.
Well, my mother bought us matching T-shirts when we were in high school. I picked them out, and so we've matched ever since.
Francis and Rosemary Klontz met in junior high in Auburn, Washington.
I thought she was the cutest little thing when she came into our town. By the time we were seniors, we started going together.
At 19 years old, they were married. Now, both 87 years young, Francis knows the term happy wife, happy life all too well, letting his bride of more than a half a century pick his outfits every day.
She just lays it out for me, and I don't have to worry about a thing.
And while it's obvious they are in tune with each other vocally, when asked about the secret to a happy marriage, this duet is very much in sync.
Jesus first, others second, yourself last. That's a way to spell joy. Jesus and others and you. What a wonderful way to spell joy.
And these singing chaplains perform at their local church, hospitals, and even just around the house. A pitch-perfect match made in heaven.
Soon they say romances break up. How I hope and how I pray we will always be together long after graduation day.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And we end tonight with a performance by the Sea Monks from the KPBS Midday Edition Summer Music Series. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great night.
Well, I go swimming with the sharks and I walk backwards in the dark. I'd sleep all night in some old thorny shrub. Them boulders on my head, I'd work until I'm almost dead just to give me to that continental blood. Well, I'd walk naked in the cold, not been bought, not been sold. I'd even eat one slimy filthy grub. Them boulders on my head, I'd work until I'm almost dead just to give me to that continental blood. There ain't no other place around you can hear that lonesome sound. There ain't no diamond in the mud. Well, my heroes walk that stage, you could say I can't.